The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was watering my orchids. I almost didn't answer. My hands were covered in potting soil, and the number wasn't one I recognized. But something made me wipe my palms on my gardening apron and pick up. "Barbara Johnson?" The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes, this is she." "My name is Melissa Chen. I'm the wedding coordinator for the Harrison Blake wedding scheduled for next May at Rosewood Manor. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." My heart skipped. Rosewood Manor. Of course she'd chosen Rosewood. "I'm calling regarding the guest list," Melissa continued. "We need to confirm that you've been removed from all wedding events per the bride's specific instructions." The silence that followed felt like falling through ice. I gripped the phone tighter, my throat suddenly dry. "I'm sorry. There must be some mistake," I managed. "I'm Emily's mother." "Yes, ma'am. That's why I'm calling personally. Miss Harrison was very clear. You're not to attend the ceremony, reception, or any related events. Security will have your photo." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there in my sunroom, surrounded by blooming orchids and afternoon light, holding a phone that suddenly felt like lead. My daughter, my only child, had not just uninvited me from her wedding. She'd hired security to keep me out. 28 years of being her mother, and it had come to this. The orchid I'd been repotting sat forgotten on the bench, its roots exposed and vulnerable, just like I felt in that moment. I set down the phone with trembling hands and sank onto the Victorian settee Richard had bought me for our 15th anniversary. The same settee where Emily used to curl up with her homework, where she'd told me about her first crush, where we'd cried together the night her father died. How had we gotten here? I picked up my reading glasses from the side table and looked at the framed photo sitting there. Emily at 16, laughing at something off camera, her dark hair catching the light. She had her father's eyes, but my stubborn chin. The girl in that photo had called me her best friend. The woman getting married in 5 months had hired security to bar me from her wedding. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Probably that wedding coordinator again. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. "This is James, Emily's fiancé. I'm sorry about the call. She doesn't know I'm texting you. Can we meet? There's something you should know." I stared at the message. In 2 years of Emily dating James Blake, we'd exchanged maybe 10 words total. Emily had made sure of that. She'd kept us apart like oil and water, scheduling visits when she knew I'd be traveling, keeping conversations shallow when I asked about him. I'd seen him exactly 3 times, always from a distance, always with Emily standing between us like a guard, and now he wanted to meet. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct told me this was a trap. Another twist of the knife. Emily seemed determined to lodge deeper into my heart. But what did I have to lose? I'd already lost my daughter. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Cafe Luna on Riverside," I typed back. His response was immediate. "Thank you. Please come alone." That night I couldn't sleep. I wandered through my house like a ghost, touching things that held memories. The kitchen table where Emily had done thousands of homework assignments. The banister she'd slid down until she was too tall. The door frame where I'd marked her height every birthday until she turned 18 and declared herself too old for such things. The house felt enormous without her in it. Richard and I had bought it when Emily was 2, a massive Tudor revival that was too big even then. "Room to grow?" he'd said, imagining more children that never came. After he died when Emily was 15, I'd thought about selling, but Emily had begged me not to. "This is Dad's house," she'd said. "We can't leave Dad's house." So I'd stayed. Through the grief, through the loneliness, through the years of Emily pulling away from me inch by inch. I'd stayed in this too big house, maintaining it like a museum to our former happiness. The next morning, I dressed carefully. Not too formal, that would seem desperate. Not too casual, that would seem disrespectful. I settled on a navy blouse and cream pants, the gold watch Richard had given me for our last anniversary before the cancer took him. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw what everyone else saw. Barbara Johnson, 62 years old, silver hair kept in an elegant bob, the kind of woman who served on hospital boards and hosted charity luncheons. Respectable, controlled, put together. They didn't see the woman who'd spent the last 5 years watching her daughter slip away like sand through her fingers. Café Luna was one of those artsy places that served $17 sandwiches and played jazz too loud for conversation. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a corner table where I could see the door. Old habits from the days when Richard and I would meet contacts for his real estate business. Funny how those skills never leave you. James Blake walked in exactly at 2. I recognized him immediately, though we'd never properly met. Tall, athletic build, the kind of classic good looks that made mothers nervous. He spotted me and hesitated, then walked over with the careful gait of someone approaching a wild animal. "Mrs. Johnson, thank you for coming." He sat across from me, and I got my first real look at the man my daughter had chosen. Deep brown eyes, a day's worth of stubble, and something else. Exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying secrets. "Why did you contact me?" I asked. No point in pleasantries. He ordered coffee when the waitress appeared, then waited until she was gone. "Because Emily's making a mistake, and I think you're the only person who might be able to help. She's banned me from your wedding. I hardly think she'll listen to anything I have to say." "About that." He shifted uncomfortably. "She told me you two had grown apart. She never told me about this, the security, the formal ban. I only found out because I overheard her talking to the wedding planner." "And you're here because?" "Because the Emily I fell in love with wouldn't do this. Something's changed in the last few months. She's become—" He searched for words. "Obsessed. With the wedding, with making everything perfect, with proving something to everyone. She talks about Rosewood Manor like it's the only thing that matters. She's put us $60,000 in debt for this wedding, Mrs. Johnson. $60,000 we don't have." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "She always did love that place." "You know it? Did I know it?" I almost laughed. "We used to drive past it when she was little. She called it the fairy tale house, said she'd get married there someday. She told me her grandmother got married there." "Her grandmother got married in a church in Buffalo," I said quietly. "But Emily always preferred her own version of family history." James leaned forward. "Mrs. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Johnson, what happened between you two? The real story, not whatever Emily's been telling people." I studied him. This man who'd been kept at arm's length for 2 years, who was marrying my daughter in 5 months, who knew so little about the family he was joining. "That's a long story, Mr. Blake." "I've got time." The waitress refilled our coffees. I added cream, stirring slowly, buying time to decide how much to reveal. But what was the point of secrets now? Emily had already made her choice. "It started when Richard died," I began. "Emily was 15. She took it hard. We both did. But while I grieved Emily, she got angry. Not at cancer or God or the unfairness of it all. She got angry at me. Why? Because I survived and he didn't. Because I was the one who had to tell her he was gone. Because I was there to blame." I paused, remembering those brutal months. She started rewriting history, making Richard into a saint and me into the villain who'd never understood him. Never mind that Richard and I had been happily married for 20 years. In Emily's new version, I was the cold one, the controlling one, the one who'd made his life miserable. James was quiet, processing. I thought it was grief, I continued. The counselor said it was normal, that she'd work through it. So I gave her space. I let her pull away. I told myself she'd come back when she was ready. But she didn't. No. She went to college and the distance became permanent. She'd come home for holidays, but it was like hosting a polite stranger. She started telling people stories about her childhood that weren't true. How I'd been overbearing, critical, jealous of her relationship with her father. None of it real, but told with such conviction that people believed her. Including me, James said quietly. The worst part was that she seemed to believe it. Herself. It was like she'd edited her memories, kept the ones that fit her narrative and discarded the rest. The mother who'd stayed up all night when she had pneumonia, who'd driven her to violin lessons for 10 years, who'd fought the school board when they tried to cut the music program, that mother ceased to exist. When did she ban you from the wedding? I didn't know I was banned until yesterday. We haven't spoken in 8 months. The last time was at her engagement party, which I wasn't invited to but showed up anyway. She was furious, said I was trying to ruin her happiness, that I couldn't stand to see her succeed without me. The truth was, I just wanted to toast my daughter's engagement like any other mother. James rubbed his face. She told me you caused a scene. I lifted a champagne glass and said, to Emily and James, that was my scene. We sat in silence. The jazz played on, something moody and blue that fit the conversation perfectly. There's more, James said finally. The reason I asked you here, Emily's been having these episodes, anxiety attacks, but worse. She'll lock herself in the bathroom for hours, obsessing over wedding details. Last week, I found her at 3 a.m, surrounded by fabric samples, crying because the napkins were ecru instead of ivory. She's always been particular. This is beyond particular. She's talked about Rosewood Manor like it's life or death. She says if we can't have the wedding there, she'd rather not get married at all. She's put down 3 separate deposits we can't afford, terrified someone else will book it first. Something cold settled in my stomach. Has she actually secured the venue? That's the thing. They keep saying they need to check with the owner, but they won't say who the owner is. Emily calls them daily, sometimes twice a day. It's becoming an obsession. I reached for my water glass, my throat suddenly dry. Of all the venues in Northern California, of all the places she could have chosen for her fairy tale wedding. Mrs. Johnson, are you all right? I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I was sitting across from my daughter's fiancé, learning that Emily was spiraling over a wedding venue she didn't know I owned. The irony was sharp enough to cut. Will you talk to her? James asked. I know she's banned you, but maybe if you reached out, tried to reconcile before the wedding? She won't see me. You just said she's hired security. Then maybe there's another way. Look, I love Emily, but I'm scared I'm losing her to this perfect wedding she's built up in her mind. And now I'm learning that she's cut out her own mother? He shook his head. That's not the woman I proposed to. I studied him, this earnest young man who thought he could fix what had been broken for 13 years. He didn't understand that. Some fractures run too deep, that some daughters choose their ghosts over their living mothers. Can I ask you something? I said. Why Rosewood Manor? Out of all the venues you looked at, why did she choose that one? His face changed, something soft and sad creeping in. She said it was the only place that felt like home. She said her best memories were connected to that house, that getting married there would be like having her whole family present, even the ones who were gone. He paused. I thought she meant her father. Maybe she did. But her father never lived there, did he? You said she made up stories about her grandmother getting married there. What's her real connection to that place? I could have told him. Could have explained about the Sunday drives when Emily was small, how we'd park outside the gates and make up stories about the people who lived there. How Richard would pretend to be different characters, a duke, a pirate, a wizard, while Emily shrieked with laughter. How she'd plan elaborate weddings for her dolls in the car, describing every detail of the ceremonies that would take place in that magical house. But those memories belonged to the mother she'd chosen to forget. I don't know, I lied. Emily's relationship with the truth has always been complicated. James signaled for the check. I should go. Emily thinks I'm at the gym. But Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to keep trying, to help her, to fix this. If you think of anything, any way to reach her. He left his business card on the table. After he was gone, I sat there for a long time, staring at the elegant script. James Blake, financial advisor. A good man trying to save a woman who didn't want to be saved from herself. I drove home the long way, past Rosewood Manor. The gates were open for an event, and I could see the gardens in full bloom. I'd bought the property 5 years ago, through a shell company, when the previous owners had fallen on hard times. It had been Richard's dream to own it someday, back when we were young and foolish and thought dreams were things you could hold on to. I'd never told Emily. By the time I signed the papers, she was already deep in her revised history, the one where I was the villain in every story. What would have been the point? By the way, darling, I bought the fairy tale house you loved. Would you like to visit? She would have accused me of trying to buy her affection, of using money to control her. So Rosewood Manor had become my secret. I'd restored it carefully, turned it into Northern California's premier wedding venue. I'd hosted hundreds of perfect weddings there, watching other people's daughters dance with their fathers, toast their mothers, celebrate with families that hadn't fractured into sharp pieces. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Unknown number. Mrs. Johnson, this is Melissa Chen again from Rosewood Manor. Yes? I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday about the Harrison Blake wedding. We've had some unusual requests from the bride regarding security, measures, and I wanted to make sure we're handling everything according to your wishes. I closed my eyes. My wishes? Well, yes. As the owner, you have final say on all security protocols. The bride has requested quite an extensive list of banned individuals, starting with yourself, which seems irregular. How extensive? She's submitted a list of 17 names along with photos. She's also requested that we check all guests against this list at the door. Frankly, Mrs. Johnson, in 10 years of wedding planning, I've never seen anything quite like it. 17 people. My daughter had a list of 17 people she needed to keep out of her perfect day. Who else is on the list? I'm not at liberty to, although I suppose since you're the owner. Let me see. Your sister Margaret. Your brother David. Several names I believe are cousins. Some family friends. It appears to be most of your extended family, Mrs. Johnson. The hits kept coming. Not content with just banning me, Emily had eliminated anyone who might remind her of the life she'd rewritten. Implement whatever security measures the bride requests, I heard myself say. But Melissa? Don't tell her I own the venue. Not yet. Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Although, may I ask, this must be very difficult for you. You have no idea. I hung up and went inside to my empty house. In my study, I pulled out the leather journal I'd been keeping since Emily started pulling away. 5 years of trying to understand where I'd gone wrong, what I'd done to lose her. Pages and pages of memories, real ones, the kind Emily had chosen to forget or rewrite. I flipped to a blank page and began writing. Today, I learned my daughter has banned me from her wedding. The wedding she's planning at my venue. The house she doesn't know I own. The fairy tale castle where her father and I once spun dreams for her, Back when she still believed in happily ever after and mothers who loved unconditionally. The irony is perfect. The daughter who erased me from her life is desperate to get married in my house. She's calling daily, begging for approval from an owner she can't reach, not knowing that the person she's trying so hard to impress is the same mother she's hired security to keep away. I could end this with one phone call. Tell Melissa to reject the booking, cite any number of reasons. I could take away her fairy tale venue as easily as she took away my place in her life. But I won't. Because I know something Emily has forgotten. Love isn't conditional. It doesn't require reciprocation or even acknowledgement. Love simply is. And I love my daughter, even the version of her that's forgotten how to love me back. So I'll give her the perfect wedding at Rosewood Manor. I'll stay away as she's demanded. I'll let her have her fairy tale without the wicked mother to spoil it. But I'll be there in every detail. In the roses I planted in the garden where she'll take her photos. In the restoration of the ballroom where she'll have her first dance. In the careful preservation of the house she once called magical. She may have written me out of her story, but she can't erase the love that built the stage where she'll perform it. And maybe, just maybe, someday she'll remember the mother who used to park outside those gates and dream with her. The mother who bought her the fairy tale house, even after the fairy tale ended. Until then, I'll wait. I've gotten good at waiting. After all, what else does a band mother do? The morning after James's visit, I woke to find myself thinking about Emily's 7th birthday party. Strange how grief works, pulling random memories from the filing cabinet of your mind when you least expect them. That year, she'd wanted a princess party at home, but I'd convinced her to have it at the local community center. The grounds of our house were being renovated, I'd explained. What I hadn't told her was that I'd spent weeks transforming that plain community center into a palace. Fabric draped from the ceiling, paper flowers covering every wall, a throne made from a painted dining chair. Her face when she walked in still lives in my heart, that pure joy of a child whose mother had created magic from nothing. Now she wanted real magic, a real palace, and she had no idea her band mother held the keys. My phone buzzed, Margaret, my sister, calling from Seattle. "Barbara, what in God's name is happening? I just got a call from some wedding planner telling me I'm not welcome at Emily's wedding. Me, her godmother." I poured myself coffee with my free hand. "I know." "You know? How long have you known? And why didn't you warn me? Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to hear from a stranger that my own niece has blacklisted me?" "I found out 2 days ago. About myself, anyway. I didn't know about the rest of you until yesterday." Margaret's silence stretched long. When she spoke, again her voice was softer. "Oh, Barb, she banned you from the wedding?" "Security has my photo." "That child. I swear Richard would roll over in his grave if he knew how she's treated you. Remember how he used to say she got her stubbornness from you? Well, he was wrong. That level of cruelty? That's all her own creation." I sank into my kitchen chair, the one with the wobbly leg Richard had always meant to fix. "She's not cruel, Maggie. She's lost." "Lost? She's 31 years old, for heaven's sake. At what point do we stop making excuses for her?" "Never," I thought, but didn't say. That's what mothers do. We never stop hoping our children will find their way back. "Have you considered telling her?" Margaret asked. "About Rosewood?" "No." "But Barbara, she's obsessing over your venue. The same venue where she's banned you from attending. The irony alone would only make things worse. Can you imagine? Hello, darling. I know you've hired security to keep me out, but surprise, I own the place. Now about that mother of the bride dance." "When you put it like that," Margaret sighed. "What are you going to do?" "What I've been doing for 5 years. Love her from a distance." After we hung up, I made a decision. If I was going to be banned from my daughter's wedding, I could at least make sure the venue was perfect for her. I called Melissa Chen. Mrs. Johnson, perfect timing. I was about to call you. We have a situation with the Harrison Blake wedding. My stomach clenched. What kind of situation? The bride is insisting on visiting the venue again. Today. She's called 6 times this morning, increasingly agitated. She seems to be under the impression that someone is trying to steal her date. Is someone? Of course not. We have her booked for May 15th, contract signed, deposit paid. But she keeps asking to speak with the owner, says she needs personal assurance that her wedding won't be canceled. I've explained that you prefer to remain anonymous, but she's becoming quite insistent. I thought of James's words about Emily's anxiety, her 3 a.m. fabric sample breakdowns. Let her come, give her a tour, show her whatever she needs to. See? Will you be on property? No, I'll make sure of it. But Melissa? Make it special. Not just a tour. Show her the hidden garden. Open the tower room. Let her see the kitchen facilities. Whatever calms her fears. Understood. Mrs. Johnson, if I may. This situation seems quite painful for you. Pain and love often come wrapped in the same package, at least where children are concerned. I spent the day in my study, far from Rosewood Manor and the daughter who might have sensed my presence there like a disturbance in the atmosphere. Instead, I surrounded myself with photo albums from better days. Emily in her Halloween costume, age 9, insisting on being both a doctor and a princess. Emily at 12, playing violin at the school concert, scanning the audience for my face. Emily at 15, just before Richard died. The last photo where she looked at me with uncomplicated love. The girl in those photos felt like a stranger now. Or maybe I was the stranger. Maybe that's what Emily had been trying to tell me all along. That evening, Melissa called back. The visit went well. The bride was very pleased, though she did spend an unusual amount of time in the main gardens. The gardens where I'd planted heritage roses the year after I bought the property, where Richard and I had once sat with young Emily, making up stories about the flowers having secret names and magical powers. She also asked numerous questions about the history of the property, seemed particularly interested in who had owned it over the years. I kept to our agreed-upon story about the owner being a private investor who prefers anonymity. How did she react? She seemed frustrated. She mentioned something about feeling a connection to the house that she couldn't explain. She actually asked if the owner ever visited the property, if there was any chance they might attend her wedding. The irony was suffocating. My daughter, who had banned me from her life, wanting the anonymous owner to bless her union. If only she knew the owner would have given anything just to watch from the parking lot. She also made an odd request, Melissa continued. She wants to reserve the tower room for the morning of the wedding. Said she needs a private space to prepare, away from the bridal suite. She was very specific about wanting that particular room. My hand tightened on the phone. The tower room, where Emily used to press her nose against the car window, watching. The single-lit window and making up stories about the princess who lived there. I'd restored that room first, filling it with the kind of old-fashioned elegance a little girl might imagine. Apparently, some part of her remembered. Grant her whatever she wants, I said. No additional charge. You're very generous, Mrs. Johnson. Was I? Or was I just a pathetic mother buying glimpses of her daughter's happiness from the shadows? 3 weeks passed. I kept my distance from Rosewood, conducting all business through Melissa and our event staff. But Emily's wedding consumed my thoughts. I found myself planning details she'd never know about. I ordered peonies for the gardens because they'd been her favorite flower at 16. I had the fountains cleaned and checked twice. I even tracked down the same variety of apple trees Richard had taught her to climb, planting them where they'd be visible from the ceremony site. Then James called again. Can we meet? Same place? This time he looked worse, thinner, shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "She's getting worse," he said without preamble. "The wedding has become her entire world. She's quit her job to focus on planning full-time. She's alienated most of her friends over tiny perceived slights. Last week, her maid of honor suggested maybe scaling back some of the expenses, and Emily disinvited her from the wedding party." "James?" "I found her medications, anxiety pills, antidepressants, prescriptions going back years that she never told me about. When I confronted her, she said they were from her dark period, that she didn't need them anymore because she was finally getting everything she deserved." "Has she talked about me?" He looked away. "She found an old photo of you two together, from when she was young. She tore it up, but I saw her crying over the pieces later. When I asked about it, she said she was crying for the mother she wished she'd had, not the one she got." Each word was a small knife, but I'd grown used to the cutting. "There's something else," he continued. "I've been doing research on Rosewood Manor. Did you know the property was sold 5 years ago to a private company?" My pulse quickened. "Oh?" "Hall Holdings, LLC. I couldn't find much about them, but the timeline is interesting. Right around when Emily started talking about getting married there someday. Almost like someone knew it was her dream venue." He was fishing, but in dangerous waters. Coincidences happen. "Do they?" He leaned forward. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you have any connection to Rosewood Manor?" The moment stretched between us. I could lie. Had been lying by omission for years. But looking at this exhausted young man who loved my daughter despite her avalanche of red flags, I found I was tired of lies. "Yes?" His eyes widened. "You work there?" "I own it." The color drained from his face. He sat back, processing. She's getting married at your venue. The venue she's obsessed with. The venue where she's banned you from attending. Now you understand why I didn't mention it." "How long?" 5 years. I bought it through a holding company after the previous owners defaulted. Emily had always loved it, and I don't know what I thought. Maybe that someday we'd reconcile and I could surprise her. Foolish dreams of a foolish mother. James ran his hands through his hair. "This is insane. She talks about that place like it's sacred ground. She's convinced it's the only location in the world where she can be happy. And you've owned it all along?" "She can never know," I said firmly. "Promise me." If she found out, she'd either cancel the wedding entirely or turn it into something even more twisted. She needs this day to be perfect, and it can't be perfect if she knows I'm connected to it. "But you're her mother. You should be there." Should doesn't factor into Emily's world anymore. I made peace with that. "How?" His voice cracked. "How do you make peace with your child hating you? She doesn't hate me. Hate would require seeing me as I really am. Emily sees a version of me she created to make sense of her pain when her father died. It's easier to blame the living than to be angry at the dead." "So you just accept it? Let her ban you from her wedding at your own venue?" "What would you have me do? Storm in and demand my rights? Use my ownership as leverage?" That would only prove her version of me correct. The controlling mother who can't let go. James shook his head. "I don't think I could be that strong." "It's not strength, it's love. The kind that doesn't need to be acknowledged to exist." We sat quietly for a moment. Around us, the cafe buzzed with normal lives. People having normal problems that didn't involve being erased by their children. "I'm going to tell her," James said suddenly. "Not about the venue, but about us meeting. About how wrong it is to cut you out. Someone needs to stand up for you. Please don't." "Why?" "Because she'll make you choose. And if you choose me, even in conversation, she'll see it as betrayal." I've already lost my daughter. Don't make me responsible for her losing the man she loves too. He deflated. So what do I do? Love her, be patient with her, and when the anxiety and obsession calm after the wedding, maybe you can slowly help her see things differently. Not for my sake, for hers. She's carrying weight that's crushing her. The stories she tells herself about me, the family she's cut off, it's all armor, and armor gets heavy after a while. What if it doesn't calm after the wedding? I didn't answer. We both knew some wounds went too deep for marriage to heal. After James left, I drove past Emily's apartment building. Not to see her. I'd learned that lesson after too many awkward encounters, but just to be near her for a moment. Her car was in its usual spot, the same sedan I'd helped her buy after college. There was a wedding dress bag visible in the back seat. My phone rang. Melissa again. Mrs. Johnson, I'm sorry to bother you, but we have another situation. The bride has submitted her final guest list, and it's substantial. 350 guests. The mansion can accommodate that. Yes, but here's the thing. She's also submitted an equally substantial list of photos for security. The band list. It's now up to 25 people. She wants security at every entrance, checking each guest against her list. She's offered to pay extra for additional security personnel. 25 people excluded from her perfect day. How exhausting it must be, I thought, maintaining that many grudges. Give her what she wants, I said, but make sure the security is discreet, invisible if possible. I don't want other guests made uncomfortable. Of course. Mrs. Johnson, I have to ask, how are you managing this? In your position, I don't think I could bear it. You find ways. Speaking of which, I have a special request. The morning of the wedding, I want you to leave something in the tower room where Emily will be getting ready. What kind of something? A gift. No card, no indication of who it's from. Just a small wrapped box on the vanity. What should the gift be? I thought of the locked drawer in my bedroom, the one thing of Richard's I'd kept just for her. I'll handle that part. Just make sure it's there when she arrives. Consider it done. That night, I unlocked the drawer and pulled out the small velvet box. Inside were the pearl earrings Richard had bought for Emily's future wedding day. He'd shown them to me just weeks before his diagnosis, grinning like a conspirator. Every bride needs something old, he'd said. When our little girl gets married, these will be from her dad who loves her. He never got to see her grown. Never knew she'd rewrite their history, turning him into a saint and me into the reason for all her pain. Maybe that was a mercy. I rewrapped the box in silver paper, no card, no message that might give me away. Just a gift from a father to his daughter, delivered by the ghost of the mother she'd chosen to forget. 2 months before the wedding, I hired a new caretaker for Rosewood. Someone to be my eyes and hands on the property while I maintained my distance. Thomas was a quiet man, in his 60s who understood discretion. I told him about the situation in broad strokes, a family wedding where I couldn't be present. Anything particular you want me to watch for? He asked. Just make sure everything is perfect. The bride is particular and struggling. I want her day to be everything she's dreamed of. He nodded without judgment. Good man. Through Thomas, I kept tabs on the preparations. Emily visited the venue weekly, sometimes more. She measured rooms she'd already measured, took photos of angles she'd already captured. She brought fabric samples to test in different lights, arranged and rearranged, the ceremony space in her mind. She seems haunted, Thomas told me one evening. Keeps looking around like she's expecting someone. Asked me twice if the owner ever comes by. What did you tell her? What you instructed. That the owner values privacy but takes pride in every event hosted here. How did she react? She said it felt personal, the care taken with the property. Said it reminded her of something, but she couldn't place what. Of course it felt personal. Every rose bush, every restored molding, every carefully chosen fixture had been selected with her childhood dreams in mind. I'd built her the fairy tale castle she'd imagined from the outside of our car, even if she'd never know it. One evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Silence on the other end. Then breathing. Then very quietly, "Mom?" My heart stopped. "Emily?" More silence. I held my breath, afraid any sound might spook her. She started, then stopped. I heard what might have been a sob, quickly swallowed. "Never mind. Wrong number." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, willing it to ring again. It didn't. I called back but got a generic voicemail. I spent the rest of the night replaying those 2 seconds of her voice, parsing every pause and breath. She'd called me Mom. Not Barbara, not nothing. Mom. But by morning, doubt crept in. Maybe I'd imagined the emotion in her voice. Maybe it really had been a wrong number, just muscle memory dialing a number she'd known by heart since childhood. Maybe I was so desperate for connection that I'd heard what I wanted to hear. James texted that afternoon. "She's been crying all day. Won't say why. Did something happen?" I didn't reply. What could I say? That she'd called me and hung up? That for 2 seconds I'd heard my daughter in pain and couldn't help her? That being banned from her life didn't stop me from wanting to fix everything for her, the way I had when she was small? 3 weeks before the wedding, Margaret called again. "I'm coming out," she announced. "Not for the wedding, obviously, since I'm persona non grata, but I'm not letting you go through this alone." "Maggie, that's not necessary." "It is. You're my sister. Your daughter is making the biggest mistake of her life, and you're sitting there letting her. Someone needs to be the voice of reason. Please don't make this harder." "Harder? Barbara, she's trampling all over you and you're lying down." To make it easier for her to walk. Richard would never have stood for this. "Richard isn't here," I said quietly. "And maybe that's the point. Maybe if he were, none of this would have happened. You can't keep blaming yourself for surviving when he didn't. But I could, and I did, because mothers are experts at finding ways we've failed our children, even when the failure belongs to fate or God or cells that divide wrong and steal fathers too soon. Margaret arrived the next week, sweeping into my house with the force of her personality. She took one look at me and shook her head. "You've lost weight. When's the last time you ate a proper meal?" "I eat." "Coffee isn't a food group, Barbara." She installed herself in my guest room and set about trying to save me from my own acceptance. She cooked elaborate meals I picked at. She dragged me to museums and shopping trips I floated through. She talked and talked, filling the silence I'd grown comfortable with. But at night, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her crying in the guest room. For her niece who'd lost her way. For her sister who refused to fight back. For the family that had splintered apart after Richard's death. "You should go to the wedding," she said one morning over breakfast. "Not inside, obviously, but you could watch from somewhere. Thomas could let you into the grounds. You could see her get married, even from a distance." "No?" "Why not?" "Because she made her wishes clear. I'll respect them." "Even if it kills you?" "I'm not dying, Maggie. I'm just separate. Some love exists better at a distance." She slammed her coffee mug down. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." Maybe it was, but it was also true. Emily had drawn her boundaries in concrete and hired security to enforce them. The least I could do was honor them. 1 week before the wedding, Thomas called with an update. The bride was here today with the wedding planner. They did a full walkthrough. She seemed calmer than usual. Happy, even. Good. That's good. She did ask about something strange, though. Wanted to know if we ever have piano music in the evenings. Said she'd heard it before when driving by. My hand tightened on the phone. In the last months of his life, Richard had taught himself piano. Just simple melodies, nothing complex. He'd play in the evenings while Emily did homework and I read. She used to say it sounded like lullabies for grown-ups. After I bought Rosewood, I'd sometimes play the piano in the main parlor. The same simple melodies Richard had taught himself, floating through empty rooms where my daughter would someday celebrate without me. What did you tell her? That sound carries strangely on the property. Could be from neighboring houses. Thank you, Thomas. Mrs. Johnson, would you like me to arrange anything special for the day? Anything that might ease things for you? Dear, kind Thomas. Just make sure everything is perfect for her. That's all I need. But that night, I drove to Rosewood, let myself in with my owner's key. Sat at the piano Richard would never play and Emily would never acknowledge. I played his melodies in the dark, filling the space where her wedding would happen with the ghost of the father she'd sanctified and the mother she'd erased. Somewhere in town, my daughter was counting down days to her perfect wedding. Somewhere, she was finalizing details and checking her band list and dreaming of the fairy tale that would unfold in this very room. I played until my fingers ached, until the notes blurred together, until I couldn't tell where Richard's music ended and my grief began. Then I locked the piano, left the mansion, and drove home to my empty house. 6 days until the wedding. 6 days until my daughter got everything she wanted in the one place she'd never know was mine to give. 5 days before the wedding, the rain started. Not the gentle spring showers that bless gardens and wash the world clean, but a torrential downpour that turned streets into rivers and made the local news. I watched from my kitchen window as water cascaded off the roof, thinking of outdoor ceremonies and wet silk shoes, and Emily's perfect day dissolving into mud. My phone rang. Melissa, breathless with controlled panic. Mrs. Johnson, we have a situation. The weather forecast shows rain continuing through the weekend. The Harrison Blake ceremony is scheduled for the gardens, and the bride is not handling it well. Define not handling it well. She's been here since 6 this morning, pacing the grounds in the rain. She's soaked through. When I suggested we move the ceremony to the ballroom, which is spectacular and easily accommodates her guest count, she became hysterical. She says it has to be outside, that indoor weddings are cursed, that her father specifically wanted her to marry under open sky. I closed my eyes. Richard had said no such thing. He'd wanted her to marry someone who made her laugh. The venue had never come up in his dying wishes, mostly because he'd been focused on telling her he loved her, not dictating future party planning. What do you need from me? Permission to install temporary covering? We could do a clear tent. Over the garden space, preserve the outdoor feeling while protecting against rain. It's expensive on such short notice, but do it, whatever it costs. The bride may refuse. She seems to have very specific ideas about tents being tacky. Then don't call it a tent. Call it an atmospheric covering. Call it insurance. Call it whatever makes her accept it. And Melissa? Have Thomas checked the tower room heating? If she's spending the morning there, I want it warm enough to help her if she arrives cold and wet. You're very kind to someone who's been very unkind to you. Kind? No, I was just a mother who knew her daughter's tells. Emily pacing in rain meant Emily on the edge of a breakdown. The same girl who used to walk circles in our backyard during thunderstorms, claiming the rain helped her think, really just trying to outrun anxiety that chased her even then. After hanging up, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Dr. Helena Marsh, the therapist Emily had seen after Richard's death. Barbara, she said warmly. It's been too long. How are you? I'm calling about Emily. A pause. You know I can't discuss. I'm not asking for confidential information. I'm asking, hypothetically, if a patient exhibited obsessive behavior, Around a major life event, combined with historical revisionism and systematic elimination of support systems, what would that suggest? Another pause. Longer. Hypothetically, it might suggest someone struggling with control in response to early trauma. Someone who's rewritten their narrative to avoid confronting pain. The elimination of people who challenge that narrative would be self-protective, if ultimately self-destructive. And if this hypothetical person was putting enormous pressure on one perfect day to somehow resolve years of unprocessed grief, then I'd be very concerned about what happens when that perfect day can't live up to impossible expectations. Thank you, Helena. Barbara, take care of yourself too. Watching someone you love struggle from a distance is its own kind of grief. That evening, Margaret found me in Richard's old study, now my home office, staring at spreadsheets for Rosewood Manor. The books that meant nothing compared to the photo on my desk, Emily at 25, laughing at something off camera, still visiting before the final break. You're torturing yourself, Margaret said from the doorway. I'm reviewing the quarterly reports. You're staring at pictures and pretending to work. There's a difference. She came in, perched on the desk edge like she used to when we were teenagers, and she'd invade my room to share gossip. Talk to me. About what? About how you're planning to handle Saturday. About watching your only child get married at your own venue where you're banned from attending. About the fact that you're paying for tents to protect the daughter who won't speak to you from rain she's choosing to stand in. There's nothing to handle. Saturday will come and go like any other day. Barbara Susan Johnson, you are the worst liar I've ever met. She was right. I was already strategizing how to fill the hours. Maybe a long drive up the coast, maybe a movie marathon. Maybe just unconsciousness courtesy of the sleeping pills I'd been hoarding. I keep thinking, I said quietly, about her first day of kindergarten. She was so scared. Wouldn't let go of my hand. I had to sit in the classroom for the first hour, until she felt safe enough to let me leave. I promised her I'd always be there when she needed me. You kept that promise. She's the one who broke it. Did I, though? Was I there when she needed me most? After Richard died? You were drowning in your own grief. You did the best you could. Maybe best wasn't enough. Margaret stood, walked around the desk, and did something she hadn't done since we were children. She crawled into my lap like we were 8 and 6 again, before dignity and proper behavior mattered. I held my baby sister while she cried for my broken family, and I stayed dry-eyed because someone had to. 3 days before the wedding, Thomas called with updates. The tents were installed. Atmospheric covering had worked, apparently. The bride had approved after being assured they were architectural installations, not common party tents. She'd also requested battery-powered heaters throughout the space, worried about guests being cold. Anything else? I asked. She left something behind. A notebook. Should I call her? What kind of notebook? Looks personal, like a journal. It was in the tower room. My pulse quickened. I'll handle it. Can you leave it in the main office? I drove to Rosewood that evening, letting myself in through the service entrance. The notebook sat on my desk, innocent-looking in its floral cover. I shouldn't read it. Every ethical bone in my body knew that. But I was already banned from her wedding, already erased from her life. What was one more transgression? I opened it. The first entries were wedding planning, seating charts, vendor contacts, minute details about flower arrangements. But as I flipped through, the tone changed. The handwriting became more erratic. And there, in the middle, my name started appearing. Mom would have known what to do about the roses. Saw a woman at the florist who looked like Mom from behind. Had to. Leave. Dreamed about Dad again. He asked why Mom wasn't at the wedding. Couldn't answer. James keeps saying I should reconsider. He doesn't understand. I can't go back now. I've come too far. Sometimes I forget why I'm angry. Then I remember, she survived and he didn't. She got to keep going and he had to stop. It should have been different. But what if I'm wrong? What if, no, Can't think that way. Stay strong. Perfect wedding. Perfect life. No room for doubt. The last entry was dated yesterday. 3 days. 3 days until I marry James in the place Dad and I used to dream about. I can do this. I can get through this without her. I've done everything without her for years. This is just one more day. But why does the tower room feel so familiar? Why do I keep hearing piano music that isn't there? Why does this whole place feel like love and loss and home all at once? I'm so tired of being angry, but I don't know how to stop. I closed the notebook, my hands shaking. There it was, in her own words. The anger she couldn't release. The grief she couldn't process. The mother she couldn't forgive for the crime of continuing to breathe when her father couldn't. I should have left the notebook and gone home. Instead, I walked through the mansion I'd bought for her, seeing it through her eyes. The tower room where she'd dreamed of being a princess. The gardens where she'd marry James. The ballroom where she'd dance to songs Richard would never hear. In the parlor, I sat at the piano. Began to play, not Richard's simple melodies, but something else. The lullaby I used to sing when she was small and scared of thunderstorms. My voice cracked on the first verse, but I pushed through. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. I'd sung it to her hundreds of times. In the car during long drives, in her bedroom when nightmares struck. In the hospital the night Richard died and she couldn't stop shaking. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue. A sound made me stop. Footsteps. The front door opening. Hello. Emily's voice, tired and suspicious. Is someone here? I froze. She couldn't find me here. Not now. Not like this. I know someone's here, she called out, stronger now. I saw a car in the service lot. I stood as quietly as possible, but the piano bench scraped against the floor. Her footsteps came faster, toward the parlor. Toward me. And then she was there, standing in the doorway in a rain-dampened coat, hair wild around her face, looking like the ghost of the girl I'd raised. Mom? We stared at each other across 15 feet of Persian rug and 5 years of silence. She looked older, thinner. The anxiety James had described evident in the way she held herself, like she was braced for impact. What are you doing here? Her voice was flat, careful. I was just leaving. That's not what I asked. I couldn't tell her the truth. Couldn't say I owned this place, that I'd bought her fairy tale castle, that I'd been here loving her from the shadows all along. I know the owner, I said, which wasn't a lie. They let me play sometimes. The piano. I didn't know you'd be here tonight. You know the owner? Suspicion sharpened her voice. How? It's a small world, Emily. Don't. She stepped back like I'd struck her. Don't say my name. You lost that right. I'm sorry. I'll go. That song, she said suddenly. You were playing my song. It was always your song. Something cracked in her expression. For a heartbeat, I saw my daughter again. Lost, frightened, wanting comfort but not knowing how to ask. Then the walls slammed back up. You need to leave, now. If you show up on Saturday, I won't. I mean it. I have security. I know, your fiancé told me. Her face flushed. You've been talking to James? He's worried about you. He had no right. He loves you, Emily. People who love you worry. That's what love does. Don't lecture me about love. Her voice rose, years of anger finally finding a target. You don't get to stand there and talk about love when I what? I kept my voice soft. When I survived? When I couldn't save him? When I failed to be the perfect grieving widow you needed me to be? When you moved on? She was shouting now. When you just kept living like he never existed? When you cleared out his things and painted his study and acted like everything was fine? I painted his study 3 years after he died. You were away at college. You didn't want any of his things. You told me to do whatever I wanted with them. I was grieving. So was I. The words came out harder than I intended. I lost my husband, Emily, my partner, the love of my life. But I couldn't fall apart because I had a daughter who needed me. So yes, I kept living. I kept breathing. I kept getting up every morning even when I didn't want to. Because that's what mothers do. I didn't ask you to. You didn't have to ask. You were my child, my responsibility, my joy, even when you started hating me for it. I don't hate you, she said, but it sounded like a question. Then why am I banned from your wedding? Silence stretched between us. Rain pattered against the windows. Somewhere in the mansion, a clock chimed 10. Because, she said finally quietly, if you're there, I'll cry. And if I cry, I'll fall apart. And if I fall apart, I'll never be able to put myself back together again. Oh, my darling girl. My broken, stubborn, impossible child. Falling. Apart isn't the worst thing, I said carefully. Sometimes it's the only way to let people help put you back together. I can't. Why? Because I've been angry for so long, I don't know how to be anything else. Because I've told everyone. Stories about you that I'm not sure are true anymore. Because I'm getting married in 3 days and I'm terrified and exhausted and I can't even remember why we stopped talking and I miss my mom, but I don't know how to have a mother anymore and… She broke. Sobbed. 13 years of tears finally. Breaking free. I crossed the room without thinking, pulled her into my arms. She resisted for a heartbeat, then collapsed against me. I held my daughter while she cried herself empty, her tears soaking through my shirt, her body shaking with the force of everything she'd been carrying alone. I'm so tired, she whispered when the sobs finally slowed. I know, baby. I know. I ruined everything. No, you were hurting. We both were. James is going to leave me. I'm falling apart and the wedding's going to be a disaster and… James isn't going anywhere. The wedding will be beautiful, and falling apart just means you're finally ready to heal. She pulled back, looked at me with swollen eyes. How do you know? Because I own the venue. Because I've made sure every detail is perfect. Because I've been watching over you even when you couldn't see me. Because I know you, I said instead. And I know that underneath all this pain, you're still my Emily. Still the girl who insisted on wearing a tutu to grocery stores. Still, the woman strong enough to build a life, find love, chase her dreams. You're just lost right now, but lost isn't the same as gone. I don't know how to fix this. I sent out a banned list. I told everyone you were toxic. Shh, we don't have to fix everything tonight. But the wedding is in 3 days. Right now, you need rest. When's the last time you really slept? She laughed, but it was hollow. I don't remember. Come home with me, just for tonight. Sleep in your old room. We can figure out the rest tomorrow. I can't. I have to. Emily. I held her face, in my hands, the way I used to when she was small. Let me be your mother, just for tonight. Please. She crumbled again, nodded. Let me lead her out of the mansion she didn't know was mine, to the car she didn't know I'd bought specifically, because it was the safest model available. I drove her through streets she'd grown up on, to the house she'd been avoiding for years. Margaret was waiting, somehow knowing without being told. She simply opened her arms and Emily fell into them, her aunt holding her while I made tea. I'm sorry, Emily kept saying. I'm so sorry. Hush now, Margaret murmured. You're home. That's all that matters. I tucked her into her childhood bed, still made up with the quilt her grandmother had sewn. She caught my hand as I turned to leave. Mom, will you stay? Just until I fall asleep? I sat on the edge of her bed, smoothed her hair away from her face, began to hum the rainbow song. She was asleep before I finished the first verse. I stayed, anyway, watching my daughter sleep, memorizing her face. Thanking God and Richard and whoever else might be listening for this moment I never thought I'd have again. 2 days before the wedding, Emily woke up disoriented, then panicked. Oh God, did that really happen? Did I really? You came home, I said from the doorway, carrying a tray of breakfast. Nothing more dramatic than that. I broke down, at Rosewood. I cried all over you. I've been cried on before. I survived. She sat up slowly, taking in her childhood room. Nothing's changed. Some things are worth preserving. Even when they hurt? Especially then. She picked at the toast, avoiding my eyes. James is going to be worried. I didn't come home last night. Margaret called him. He knows you're safe. What did she tell him? The truth. That you needed your mother. Emily flinched. I've needed my mother for 5 years. I was just too proud to admit it. Pride's a family trait. You come by it honestly. From you or Dad? Both. We were quite a pair. She finally looked. At me. Tell me about him. The real him. Not the saint I created or the stranger you became. Just Dad. So I did. Over breakfast growing cold, I told her about Richard. How he couldn't cook anything but scrambled eggs. How he cried at insurance. Commercials. How he used to practice his teacher voice in the mirror before each school year. How he loved her with a fierce, protective love that sometimes drove me crazy. He wasn't perfect, I said. He was impatient, stubborn, terrible with money. He once forgot my birthday entirely and tried to convince me he'd planned for us to celebrate the next day all along. Emily smiled, a real smile. Did you believe him? Of course not. But I let him think I did. That's what love does. It chooses kindness over being right. I haven't been kind to you, to anyone. You've been in pain. Pain makes us all unkind sometimes. For 5 years? Grief doesn't have a timeline. Sweetheart, it's not linear, it's not logical, it just is. I need to fix this. The wedding, the family, everything I've broken. One thing at a time. What do you want? Not what you think you should do. What do you want? She was quiet for a long moment. I want my mom at my wedding, but I've made such a mess. The band, list, the security, details, all fixable. How? Let me worry about that. You focus on marrying James. That's all that matters. You'd do that? After everything? Emily, I would move heaven and earth for you. A guest list is nothing. She started crying again, quieter this time. I don't deserve. Stop. Love isn't about deserving. It's about showing up. Let me show up for you. Okay, she whispered. Okay. That afternoon, while Emily slept, the first real sleep she'd had in weeks, I made calls, first to Melissa. Cancel the security, all of it. New directive from the owner. But the bride specifically? The bride has reconsidered. Trust me on this. And the band list? Consider it void. Send new information to everyone on it. They're now welcomed guests if they choose to attend. Mrs. Johnson, I have to ask, did something happen? Yes. Something wonderful. Next, I called every family member Emily had excluded, explained briefly, asked for grace, invited them to celebrate if they felt comfortable. Most cried. All said yes. Then Thomas. I need you to do something special in the tower room. Fresh flowers, peonies. And can you set up the old record player? There's a specific album. By evening, word had spread. James arrived, looking haggard but hopeful. "Is she okay?" Margaret said. "She's healing," I said, finally letting herself feel everything she's been running from. "Can I see her?" "Of course, she's your bride." But when we went to her room, we found Emily on the floor, surrounded by photos. Years of pictures I'd kept in boxes under her bed. Her and Richard, her and me, the three of us together. "I forgot," she said without looking up. "I made myself forget so much." James knelt beside her, gathering her into his arms. "It's okay. You remember now. But I wasted so much time." "No," I said firmly. "You survived the best way you knew how. We all did. Now we get to do better." She looked up at me. "Mom, that notebook I left at Rosewood, did you—" "It's in my car, unread." The lie came easily. Some truths didn't need confessing. Oh. Relief, and something else crossed. Her face. Good, that's good. Margaret appeared in the doorway. "I hate to interrupt, but there are approximately 17 relatives calling to thank Barbara for lifting their banishment. Also, your cousin Carol is so excited she's already driving down from Portland." Emily laughed. Actually laughed. "Carol's coming? She'll probably wear that terrible green dress." "Definitely. It's her wedding outfit. I've missed her, missed everyone." Emily stood, still shaky but determined. "I need to fix this properly, call everyone, apologize." "Tomorrow," I said. "Tonight you rest. You're getting married in 2 days." "Mom's right," James said, and I saw Emily's face soften at the word. Mom. Like she was remembering how it felt in her mouth. We ordered Chinese food, sat around my dining room table. Emily, James, Margaret, and me. Like a family. Like we used to be, but different. Older, wiser, bearing scars but choosing connection anyway. "To second chances," Margaret raised her wine glass. "To family," James added. "To forgiveness," Emily said, looking at me. "To tomorrow," I finished, "and all the tomorrows after." We clinked glasses. Emily reached for my hand under the table. Squeezed. I squeezed back. Later, as James was leaving and Margaret was washing dishes, Emily pulled me aside. "The owner of Rosewood, the one who lets you play piano. Will you thank them for me?" "For what?" "For taking such good care of the place. It feels loved. Like someone made it perfect just for me." My throat tight, I nodded. "I'll pass that along." One day before the wedding, the rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. I woke to find Emily in my kitchen making coffee. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Too excited, too nervous, too everything." Normal bride feelings. Is it normal after everything? There's no normal, sweetheart. There's just what is. And what is you're getting married tomorrow to a good man who loves you. Everything else is just details. Big details. I still can't believe you got everyone to forgive me. They love you. Love forgives. Even Aunt Margaret? Especially. Aunt Margaret. She's already planning to cry through the entire ceremony. Emily smiled, then grew serious. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "The tower room at Rosewood. Did you ever go inside when I was little? I have this memory, or maybe a dream, of being there with you and Dad." My heart stuttered. "We used to drive by, make up stories about who lived there." "But never inside?" "No, baby, never inside." She nodded slowly. It feels so familiar, like coming home." If only you knew, I thought. If only you knew how much of home I built into those walls for you. "Speaking of the tower room," I said, deflecting, "you should head over soon. Don't you have preparations to make?" "Will you come with me? For the rehearsal? Won't that be awkward? I haven't met most of the wedding party. They've heard stories." Then they'll learn the stories were wrong. Please, Mom. I need you there. How could I say no to that? We arrived at Rosewood together, the first time I'd entered through the front door since buying it. Emily kept close, like she was afraid I might disappear, or maybe afraid she might float away without an anchor. The wedding party was already assembled. I recognized some faces, friends of Emily's I'd known since she was young. They looked shocked to see me, then carefully neutral. Emily's new maid of honor, a woman named Patricia I'd never met, actually stepped between us. "Everything's fine, Pat," Emily said firmly. "Mom's here because I want her here." "But you said—" I was wrong. About a lot of things. The rehearsal was surreal. I sat in what would be the mother of the bride spot, watching Emily and James practice their entrance, their vows, their exit. Watching it happen in the garden I'd personally designed with her, childhood dreams in mind. "Mrs. Harrison?" the officiant approached during a break. "I wanted to confirm the special reading you requested." I hadn't requested anything, but Emily was across the garden, and I saw Melissa hovering nearby, making subtle hand gestures. "Yes?" I said carefully. The Romeo and Juliet passage. Such a beautiful choice. My eyes filled. Richard used to read Shakespeare to Emily at bedtime. She'd loved the romance of it before she understood the tragedy. "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet," had been their special phrase. "It's perfect," I managed. "Thank you." The rehearsal dinner was at a nearby restaurant, small, intimate, family who'd driven in despite the last-minute notice. Emily made a speech, fumbling and tearful, apologizing for the years of distance, thanking everyone for showing up anyway. "I lost my way," she said simply, "but I'm finding it again, with help from the person I pushed away hardest, my mom." I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat. Margaret hugged me hard. James's mother, who I was meeting for the first time, squeezed my hand and whispered, "She's lucky to have you." But I was the lucky one, to have this, to have her, to have a second chance I'd never dared hope for. That night, Emily stayed at the hotel with her wedding party. But before she left, she hugged me hard in my driveway. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me." "Never," I whispered back. "Not ever." "I'll see you tomorrow? You'll be there?" Wild horses. Couldn't keep me away. She laughed, kissed my cheek, and was gone. I went inside, sat at my kitchen table, and wrote one last letter I'd never send. "Dear Richard, tomorrow our baby girl gets married. She'll walk down an aisle you'll never see, to a man you'll never meet, in a dress you'll never zip up. But you'll be there anyway, in her smile, in her stubborn chin, in the Shakespeare reading she doesn't know I arranged, in the pearl earrings you bought that she'll find tomorrow morning. She broke, my love. After you left, she broke into pieces I didn't know how to mend. We broke together, then separately, then apart. For years I thought we'd stay that way. But tonight she called me Mom again. Tonight she asked me to be there. Tonight she came home. I bought her Rosewood Manor. I know. You always said I was too soft. But I remembered how she loved it. How you'd tell her stories about the princess in the tower. How she'd plan her wedding there at age 7. So I bought it, rebuilt it, made it perfect for the day I thought would never come, the day she'd let me back in. She doesn't know. Maybe she never will. That's okay. Some love is better left invisible, working its magic from the shadows. Watch over her tomorrow, Richard. Send sunshine if you can manage it. Send peace to her anxious heart. Send her all the love I know you're holding for her, wherever you are. And maybe, if it's allowed, send a small sign that you forgive me. For surviving. For continuing. For loving our daughter so imperfectly but so fiercely that I'd buy her a castle she doesn't know is mine. Until we meet again, Barbara. I sealed the letter, put it in the drawer with all the others I'd written him over the years. Then I went to bed. Tomorrow, my daughter would get married, and I would be there. The morning of May 15th dawned crystal, clear. The storm had passed, leaving a sky so blue it looked painted. I stood at my bedroom window, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint Rosewood Manor in the distance gold and pink. My phone buzzed. Emily. The earrings, Mom. The pearls. In the tower room. Was that you? I chose truth. They're from your father. He bought them for your wedding day before he got sick. Silence, then soft crying. He loved you so much, baby. I know, she whispered. I know. Can you help me put them on? Before the ceremony? Of course. And Mom? One more thing. The owner of Rosewood. Are they coming to the wedding? I looked again at the mansion glowing in morning light. My secret gift to her. My invisible act of love. In a way, I said. They'll definitely be there in spirit. Good. I want to thank them. For everything. For making it perfect. Oh, my darling girl. My lost and found daughter. If only you knew. Just be happy, I said. That's all the thanks anyone needs. I'll try. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Always have. Always will. I know. I'm sorry I forgot. No more apologies. Today is about joy. Joy, she repeated. Yes, joy. 3 hours until the wedding. 3 hours until I watched my daughter marry the man she loved in the fairy tale castle I'd secretly built for her dreams. The dress I'd chosen hung on the closet door, soft lavender, the color of the roses I'd planted in the Rosewood gardens. Margaret was already up, singing in the shower. The house smelled like her famous cinnamon rolls, a peace offering to the morning. I opened Richard's drawer one more time, pulled out the watch he'd worn to our wedding, slipped it into my purse. Something of his to carry with me, a talisman, a reminder that love outlasts absence. Then I got ready to do what I'd thought impossible just 1 week ago. I got ready to attend my daughter's wedding. I arrived at Rosewood Manor at noon, walking through the front gates I'd crossed countless times as an owner, but never as a guest. Margaret had driven separately, claiming she needed to arrive early to help coordinate the unexpected surge of family members who'd made the journey on short notice. Really, she was giving me space to process this moment alone. The grounds had been transformed overnight. White roses climbed the pergola where Emily would take her vows. The atmospheric covering Melissa had arranged created an ethereal canopy that caught the afternoon light like captured starlight. Garden chairs were arranged in perfect symmetry, facing an altar decorated with peonies and baby's breath. It looked like a dream materialized. Thomas caught my eye from across the lawn and nodded once. Everything was in place. The tower room heated and ready. The pearl earrings waiting on the vanity. The record player loaded with the album of piano, music Richard had loved. Details Emily would never know came from the mother she'd nearly lost. Mrs. Johnson. James approached, looking handsome in his charcoal suit but still carrying the weight of worry. Thank you for coming. For everything. I know Emily seems different these past few days, but she's finally herself again. How are you holding up? Nervous as hell, he admitted with a grin. But good nervous. Like I'm about to marry the woman I fell in love with, not the stranger she'd become. She's been carrying a heavy load. It takes time to set it down. I just hope I can be the husband she deserves. The one who helps her stay found instead of getting lost again. I squeezed his arm. Just love her. That's all any of us can do. He nodded and disappeared to join the groomsmen. I walked toward the mansion, past guests already arriving and claiming their seats. I recognized many faces, cousins I hadn't seen in years, old family friends who'd stayed loyal despite Emily's stories, neighbors from the street where she'd grown up. all here because she'd found the courage to ask forgiveness. Melissa intercepted me at the entrance. Mrs. Johnson. Perfect timing. The bride is in the tower room and has been asking for you specifically. How is she? Radiant. Different from how she's been in all our previous meetings. Calm, happy, like she's finally where she belongs. If only she knew how literally true that was. I climbed the stairs to the tower room, each step heavy with memory. How many times had I stood outside this door, imagining Emily getting ready for her wedding day? How many hours had I spent perfecting every detail, never knowing if she'd ever see it? I knocked softly. Come in. Emily sat at the antique vanity I'd chosen specifically for this moment, her dark hair and soft curls around her shoulders. She wore a simple white robe, but her face was transformed. The anxiety and exhaustion of recent months had been replaced by something I hadn't seen in years. Peace. Mom. She turned, and I saw the pearls at her ears, catching the light like tiny moons. You came. I promised. I know, but I've broken so many promises to you. I wasn't sure. Emily. I sat on the small settee near the window. We don't have to keep apologizing. Today is about moving forward. I keep thinking about what Dad would say if he could see us now. Making up the day before my wedding, him missing it, the whole mess I made of things. He'd say he's proud of you for finding your way back, and he'd probably make some terrible joke about perfect timing. She laughed, a sound I'd missed more than I'd realized. Remember how he used to time everything badly? Show up late to parent-teacher conferences? Forget to pick me up from piano lessons? But he always showed up eventually. That's what mattered. Like you did. You kept showing up even when I slammed the door, even when I was cruel. I walked to the vanity, began arranging her hair around the pearls. That's what love does. It shows up. The tower room, she said suddenly. It's exactly how I imagined it would be. When I was little, looking up at that window, I'd picture myself getting ready here, feeling like a princess. My hands stilled. And do you feel like a princess? I feel like me. Finally. The me I was before everything got so complicated. She met my eyes in the mirror. Thank you for helping me remember who that was. A knock interrupted us. Emily, it's Patricia. Time to get dressed. The next hour was a blur of careful choreography. Emily's wedding dress, simple but elegant with delicate lace sleeves. The final touches to her makeup. The quiet arrival of Margaret and James's mother, both crying before they even saw the bride. Oh, honey, Margaret whispered, kissing Emily's cheek. You look just like your mother did on her wedding day. Beautiful and brave. Brave? It takes courage to love someone enough to promise forever, especially when you've learned how quickly forever can change. I stepped back, watching my daughter in her wedding dress, surrounded by women who loved her. The girl who'd banned me from her wedding now insisting I be the one to zip her into her gown. Something old, Margaret said, gesturing to the pearls. Something new, added James's mother, producing a delicate bracelet. Something borrowed, Patricia said, handing over a vintage handkerchief. Something blue, I said, pulling out the small velvet pouch I'd been carrying. Inside was the sapphire ring Richard had given me for our 10th anniversary. It was your father's gift to me. He always said it was the color of hope. Emily's eyes filled. I can't take your ring. It's not my ring today. It's yours. From both of us. She slipped it on her right hand, next to her engagement ring. Perfect fit. Most important things are. Music began drifting up from the gardens below. The string quartet I'd hired but Emily didn't know about, playing the processional she'd chosen. That's our cue, Patricia said. Everyone ready? I looked at my daughter one last time. Emily Harrison, soon to be Emily Blake, the girl I'd raised, lost, and found again. Standing in the tower room of the castle I'd bought for her dreams. "Ready," she said, and meant it. We made our way downstairs, a small procession of women who'd learned that forgiveness wasn't a single act, but a daily choice. At the bottom of the stairs, James's father waited to escort Emily down the aisle. Richard's brother David had offered, but Emily had chosen James's father as a bridge between families. "You look beautiful, dear," he said kindly. "My son is a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one," Emily replied, and I believed her. I walked to my seat in the front row, the mother of the bride spot I'd thought I'd never occupy. Margaret squeezed my hand as I sat down. Around us, the gardens I'd designed were filled with people who'd come to celebrate love winning over fear. The music changed. The processional began. Emily appeared at the back of the aisle, radiant in the afternoon light, walking toward the man who'd waited patiently for her to find her way back to herself. But something was wrong. Halfway down the aisle, she stopped, turned to scan the crowd, her expression suddenly panicked. "The music," she called out. "Can you stop the music?" The string quartet faltered to silence. Guests murmured in confusion. James stepped forward, concerned. "Emily, what is it?" She stood in the middle of the aisle, breathing hard, clutching her bouquet like a lifeline. "I can't do this, not yet. There's something I have to say first." My heart clenched. After everything, was she having second thoughts? "James," she said, her voice carrying across the silent garden. "I need to tell you something, all of you, about my mother." "Oh no, not here, not in front of everyone." "Emily," I started to stand, but Margaret held me back. "Let her," she whispered. "Let her speak." "For years," Emily continued, her voice gaining strength, "I've told people my mother was cold, controlling, critical. I told them she never understood me or my father. I told them she was the reason our family fell apart after Dad died." The silence was deafening. James looked between Emily and me, confusion clear on his face. "But I lied," Emily said, tears streaming down her face. "Not on purpose, not consciously, but I lied. My mother isn't cold. She's the warmest person I know. She's not controlling. She's protective. She's not critical. She's the person who believed in me even when I stopped believing in myself." "Emily," I whispered, but she was far enough away not to hear. "When my father died, I was so angry at the world that I needed someone to blame. And she was there. She was still breathing when he wasn't. She was still living when he had to stop. So I decided it was her fault. That somehow, if she'd been different, better, he'd still be here." Guests were crying now. Even some of the groomsmen had tears in their eyes. "But that's not how love works," Emily continued. "That's not how death works. My father died because sometimes people die. Not because anyone failed them, not because anyone didn't love them enough, just because that's what happens sometimes." She walked toward me, still speaking to the crowd but moving closer with each word. "My mother loved my father completely. She loved me completely. And when I pushed her away, she kept loving me anyway. From a distance, without conditions, without demands. She just loved me and waited for me to remember how to love her back." She reached my row, knelt in front of me in her wedding dress, taking my hands in hers. "Mom," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm sorry for the years I stole from us, for the stories I told that weren't true, for banning you from my wedding when you're the person I most wanted here." I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "I want you to walk me down the aisle," Emily said. "Not because Dad can't, but because you're the one who raised me, who taught me how to love, who showed me what it means to never give up on someone." Emily, I managed through tears. You don't have to. I want to. Please? Will you give me away? The question hung in the air. Around us, 300 guests waited. At the altar, James stood patient and understanding. In the front row, Margaret sobbed openly. Yes, I whispered. Yes, of course. I stood, helped Emily to her feet, and together we walked to the back of the aisle. The music began again, but different this time. Not the processional she'd chosen, but something else. The rainbow song. The lullaby I'd sung to her through thunderstorms and nightmares, and the terrible night her father died. Someone had programmed the string quartet to play my lullaby. Thomas probably taking initiative I'd never asked for but desperately needed. Emily heard it too. Looked at me with wonder. Our song, she said. Our song. We walked down the aisle together, mother and daughter, past guests who'd witnessed our reconciliation and the love that had survived years of silence. Past the roses I'd planted for her, past the fountains I'd restored, past the apple trees I'd planted because Richard had taught her to climb. At the altar, Emily turned to me one more time. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. I kissed her cheek, then placed her hand in James's, stepped back to my seat and watched my daughter marry the man she loved in the garden I'd created for this very moment. The ceremony was beautiful. Emily and James exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising to love through storms and sunshine, through loss and discovery, through all the ways life would test them. The officiant read the Shakespeare passage I'd requested, Richard's favorite. The rings were exchanged with hands that trembled slightly but held steady. You may kiss the bride, the officiant said. James lifted Emily's veil, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her while 300 people cheered. The string quartet played the recessional, but I barely heard it over the sound of my own heart, finally learning to sing again. At the Ichibo reception, Emily made another speech. I want to thank everyone who came today, especially those who traveled far, and those who forgave me for my temporary insanity. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But mostly, I want to thank my mother, who taught me that love doesn't end just because someone stops accepting it. Mom, you never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself. This day is as much yours as it is mine. She raised her champagne glass. To second chances, to families that survive their own breaking, and to the most patient, loving mother in the world. The toast echoed through the ballroom. I cried into my champagne and didn't care who saw. Later, during the dancing, Emily pulled me aside. The owner of Rosewood, she said. I keep asking staff to point them out, but no one will tell me who they are. Do you know? I looked around the ballroom, at the dance floor where my daughter was celebrating with her husband, at the restored beauty of the mansion I'd bought for her dreams. They prefer to remain anonymous, I said carefully, but I know they're thrilled that you're happy here. I want to thank them personally. This place, it's like someone took all my childhood dreams and made them real. The tower room, the gardens, even the piano music I keep hearing. It's like the house was waiting for me. Maybe it was. You really think so? I looked at my daughter, glowing with happiness in the ballroom where I'd imagined her wedding 1,000 times. I think some things are meant to be, I said, even when they take longer than expected to happen. Emily hugged me tight. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember how. You remembered exactly when you were supposed to. Dance with me? She asked. I know the first dance is supposed to be with the groom, but I missed 13 years of dancing with my mother. I have some catching up to do. So we danced. My daughter and I, on the floor of the ballroom I'd restored with her in mind, to music played by musicians I'd hired but she didn't know about, in the fairy tale castle I'd bought for her dreams. James joined us after a song, and then Margaret, and then the whole family. We danced until the music stopped, and the night grew late, and the last guests finally departed. Emily was the last to leave, after changing into her travel clothes for the honeymoon. She stood in the doorway of Rosewood Manor, looking back at the ballroom where she'd celebrated the beginning of her marriage. "I feel like I'm leaving home," she said. "You'll always have it," I told her. "Beautiful places live in our hearts forever." "Will you visit me here sometime? I mean, when James and I come back from our honeymoon? Maybe we could have dinner in the tower room, just the two of us." "I'd love that." She kissed my cheek and ran to the car where James waited, rice still in her hair, happiness radiating from every inch of her being. I watched them drive away, then turned back to the mansion, my mansion, the one I'd bought for her and she'd never know about. Thomas appeared at my side. "Beautiful wedding, Mrs. Johnson. Perfect wedding." "Will you tell her? About the ownership?" I considered it. The secret I'd kept for so long, the invisible gift I'd given, the truth about who had made her fairy tale possible. "Maybe someday," I said. "When she's ready. When it would add to her joy instead of complicating it. And if that day never comes? Then I'll keep the secret forever. Some love is meant to be invisible. It works its magic better that way." Thomas nodded, understanding. "Should I lock up?" "In a few minutes. I want to play one more song." I walked to the piano in the empty ballroom, my fingers finding the keys by memory. The rainbow song. The lullaby I'd sung to my daughter through every storm. The song that had played when she walked down the aisle toward her future. The notes filled the empty space, carrying memories and hope and the kind of love that doesn't need acknowledgement to exist. Somewhere over the rainbow, indeed. We'd found our way there, my daughter and I. It had just taken longer than expected. I played until the song was finished, then quietly locked the piano and walked out of the castle I'd built for Emily's dreams. Outside, the moon shone silver on the gardens where she'd promised to love James forever, where our family had healed, itself one forgiveness at a time. My phone buzzed, a text from Emily, sent from the airport. "Thank you for the most perfect day. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Your grateful daughter." I smiled, slipped the phone back in my purse next to Richard's watch, and drove home through the California night. Behind me, Rosewood Manor stood empty but not hollow. It was full of the love that had finally found its way home. Tomorrow, Emily would wake up in Paris with her new husband. Tomorrow, she'd begin building the life she'd almost missed by holding on to old pain. Tomorrow, she'd be happy. And I would be the anonymous owner of the venue where it all began, the invisible fairy godmother who'd made her dreams come true. The mother who'd loved her through everything, even when that love had to work from the shadows. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 6 months after the wedding, Emily called with news that made my heart skip. "Mom, I'm pregnant." I set down my coffee cup, afraid my trembling hands might drop it. "Oh, sweetheart, how wonderful. How are you feeling?" "Terrified, excited, nauseous." She laughed, that free sound I'd grown to treasure again. "But mostly grateful. James and I weren't sure when we wanted to start trying, but apparently the universe had other plans. The universe has excellent timing. I keep thinking about Dad, how he'll never meet his grandchild. It makes me sad, but not angry anymore. Just wistful, I guess. He'd be over the moon. You know that, right? He'd probably already be building a crib and planning to teach the baby terrible jokes. Will you help me? I know we still have things to work through, but I want you involved. I want this baby to know their grandmother." Tears blurred my vision. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. "Good. Because James and I want to ask you something. We're looking at venues for the baby shower, and we keep coming back to Rosewood Manor. I know it's probably booked months in advance, but do you think your connection with the owner might help?" My secret, still safely hidden. The gift that kept giving without her knowledge. "I'll make some calls," I said. "I'm sure something can be arranged." That afternoon, I sat in my study, staring at the phone. Emily wanted to celebrate her pregnancy at Rosewood. The grandbaby I'd never dared hope for would have their first party in the castle I'd built for their mother's dreams. The irony was perfect, and perfectly painful. I called Melissa. "We need to discuss a baby shower for the Harrison Blake family." "Of course, Mrs. Johnson. When were you thinking?" "Let Emily choose the date. Make it work, whatever she wants." "And Melissa, spare no expense. This is going to be special." Over the following weeks, I watched Emily blossom, not just with pregnancy, but with the confidence that comes from letting people love you. She called me daily, sharing every milestone, every worry, every flutter of movement. We went to her first ultrasound together, crying over the tiny heartbeat that echoed through the examination room. "Look at that," the technician said, pointing to the screen. "Very active baby." "Takes after their mother," I said, squeezing Emily's hand. "Or their grandmother. Remember all those stories Dad used to tell about you climbing trees when you were pregnant with me?" I did remember. Richard had loved those stories, embellishing them each time until I sounded like some sort of acrobatic wonder. The truth was simpler. I'd been restless, energetic, eager to keep moving until Emily arrived. Your father had a gift for creative memory. Good thing. This baby's going to need all the stories they can get. Margaret flew in for the baby shower, arriving 3 days early to help with preparations. She found me in my garden, deadheading, roses, and trying not to obsess over every detail of the upcoming party. "You're nervous," she observed, settling into the patio chair Richard used to claim. "Excited nervous or worried nervous?" "Both. It's Emily's first time back at Rosewood since the wedding. What if being there brings up complicated feelings? What if she starts asking more questions about the owner? What if she does? Would that be so terrible?" I considered it. In 6 months, my relationship with Emily had rebuilt itself slowly, carefully. We talked regularly, spent holidays together, shared the anticipation of her first child. But we hadn't discussed the deeper questions. Why I'd really forgiven her so easily, how I'd managed to get the venue for her wedding, the mysterious owner who seemed to grant her every wish. She's happy, Maggie. Truly happy for the first time. In years. I don't want to complicate that. Or maybe you're scared that telling her would make your gift less pure somehow. That she'd feel guilty or obligated. Wouldn't she? Margaret studied me with the frankness only sisters can manage. Emily's not the same person who banned you from her wedding. She's grown up. Maybe she's ready to know that love sometimes wears disguises. Maybe isn't certainty. No, but it's possibility. And isn't that what you've been betting on all along? The day of the baby shower dawned sunny and mild, perfect for an outdoor celebration. I arrived at Rosewood early, ostensibly to help with setup, but really to make sure every detail was flawless. Thomas had outdone himself. The garden pavilion was decorated in soft yellows and greens, gender-neutral and elegant. Tables were set with delicate china and fresh peonies. A dessert station featured an elaborate cake decorated with baby booties and rattles. "Mrs. Johnson," Melissa approached with her clipboard. "Everything's ready. The guest list confirms 60 attendees, mostly family and close friends. The bride, the mother-to-be, should arrive at 2. Any special requests?" She asked specifically about the tower room again. Wanted to show it to some of her college friends who couldn't make the wedding. I told her that would be fine. My stomach tightened. The tower room held so many memories now. Emily getting ready for her wedding, our reconciliation, the space where she'd worn Richard's pearls for the first time in years. Having her friends there felt like sharing something sacred, but sacred to whom? She had no idea the room had been prepared specifically for her dreams. Guests began arriving at 2, a stream of women carrying beautifully wrapped packages and warm smiles. Emily's college roommates, James's sisters, neighbors from her childhood, co-workers from her job before she'd taken maternity leave early due to morning sickness. The garden filled with laughter and conversation. Emily arrived fashionably late, glowing in a flowing dress that accommodated her growing belly. She hugged me first, then made her way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and exclaiming, over decorations. "Mom, this is incredible," she said, finding me by the gift table. "How did you manage all this?" "I had help. Good vendors. Lots of planning." The owner really went all out. "Look at those flowers. They're exactly what I would have chosen." It's like they know me. Because I do know you, I thought. Better than you realize. The party moved through its familiar rhythms. Games, gift opening, cake cutting. Emily was radiant, surrounded by women who loved her, celebrating the life growing inside her. I stayed mostly in the background, helping serve cake, collecting wrapping paper, making sure everyone had what they needed. Barbara. James's mother, Sandra, pulled me aside during the gift opening. "This is lovely. Emily seems so much happier than when I first met her. Pregnancy agrees with her. I think it's more than that. She talks about you constantly, how grateful she is for your patience, your forgiveness. I hope you know what a gift you gave her." If only she knew how many gifts I'd given without acknowledgement. She gave me a gift too. She came home. After most guests had left, Emily's college friends asked for the tower room tour she'd promised. I watched from the garden as they climbed the stairs, their voices carrying through the open windows. Emily's laughter floated down, bright and uncomplicated. 20 minutes later, they emerged, chattering about the room's beauty, the perfect view, the romantic atmosphere. But Emily was quiet, thoughtful. She lingered in the garden after her friends said goodbye, one hand resting on her belly, staring up at the tower window. "Penny for your thoughts," I said, joining her. "Something's been bothering me. Not bothering exactly, but puzzling me." "About the room?" "About all of it. The tower room, the wedding, this shower. Everything here feels so personal. Like someone who knows me very well planned every detail." My heart hammered. Good vendors do their research. "It's more than that, Mom. The roses are my favorite variety. The music during my wedding was songs you used to sing. The pearl earrings appeared in the tower room like magic. Now, today, every single detail is exactly what I would have chosen if I'd planned it myself." She turned to face me fully. "And you? You've been so involved with this place. You know the staff, you have connections with the owner. You seem completely comfortable here. More comfortable than a regular guest would be." "Emily, I'm not stupid, Mom. I may have been selfish and blind for years, but I'm not stupid." Her voice was gentle but determined. "You own Rosewood Manor, don't you?" The question hung between us. Around us, the garden held its breath. In the distance, the fountain I'd had installed gurgled softly. I could lie, could deflect again, maintain the fiction that had protected us both. But looking at my daughter, really looking at her, seeing the woman she'd become rather than the hurt girl she'd been, I realized Margaret was right. Emily was ready for truth. "Yes," I said, simply. "I own it." She closed her eyes, processing. When she opened them, they were bright with tears. "How long?" 5 years. I bought it through a holding company after the previous owners defaulted on their mortgage. 5 years. She did the math quickly. Right after our last big fight. Right after I told you I never wanted to see you again. Around then, yes. You bought my dream venue after I cut you out of my life. You'd always loved this place, even when you were little, driving by, making up stories. I thought, I don't know what I thought, that maybe someday we'd reconcile and I could surprise you. Foolish dreams of a foolish mother? Not foolish. Emily sank onto the garden bench, staring at the mansion with new eyes. You bought me a castle, like a fairy tale. I bought myself hope that there might come a day when you'd let me back in. And then I banned you from my own wedding. At your venue. God, Mom, the irony is. She laughed, but it was watery. You let me hire security to keep you out of your own property. You needed the perfect wedding. It couldn't be perfect if you knew I was connected to it. So you stayed away. Let me have my day. Never said a word. What would have been the point? You weren't ready to hear it then. Emily was quiet for a long time, one hand unconsciously tracing circles on her belly. When she spoke, her voice was full of wonder. Every rose bush, every restored room, every perfect detail. You did all of that thinking of me? I did all of that loving you, even when you couldn't love me back. The tower room where I got ready for my wedding. You designed that for me? I designed it for a little girl who used to press her nose against car windows and dream of being a princess. The garden where I walked down the aisle? Planned. Around your favorite flowers and the best light for photographs. The piano music I kept hearing? Richard's songs. I play them sometimes in the evenings. Sound carries on the property. She covered her face with her hands. I can't believe it. All this time, you've been taking care of me without me knowing. Even when I was horrible to you. Especially then. That's when you needed it most. I don't understand how you can forgive me. How you can love me after everything I did. I sat beside her on the bench, remembering all the times I'd imagined this conversation and how different the reality was from my fears. Emily, do you love the baby you're carrying? Of course, more than life itself. Have they done anything to earn that love? Accomplished anything? Achieved anything? Proved their worth? No, but that's different. Is it? Love isn't a reward for good behavior. It's not something you earn or lose based on your actions. Love just is. It exists because the relationship exists. You're my daughter. That makes loving you as natural as breathing. But I was so cruel. I wrote you out of my life. I told people terrible things about you. You were in pain. People in pain make poor choices. That doesn't make them unlovable. How did you stand it? Years of me treating you like the enemy? I thought about those years. The loneliness, the grief, the constant ache of missing her. But also the hope I'd maintained. The love I'd kept burning like a candle in the window. I held on to the truth. That underneath your anger was a daughter who was hurting. That someday, when you were ready, you'd remember that I loved you. I just had to wait for that someday to arrive. And Rosewood was your way of waiting? Rosewood was my way of loving you when I couldn't love you directly. Every improvement I made, every detail I perfected, it was all love letters you'd never read. Emily stood, walked to the fountain, stared into the water. I need to understand something. When I begged Melissa to speak with the owner about my wedding, when I called daily asking for confirmation, when I was terrified someone would take my date. You were asking me, through intermediaries, but you were asking me to approve your wedding at my venue. And you said yes, even though I'd banned you. I said yes because you asked, because it was your dream, because love doesn't require reciprocation to exist. All those months of anxiety, worrying the owner would change their mind. I was never going to change my mind. I was always going to give you exactly what you wanted. She turned back to me, tears streaming freely. Now, you gave me the perfect wedding, at the perfect venue, that I could never have afforded, that I spent months desperately trying to secure, and I never knew it was yours to give all along. It was always yours, Emily. I just held it in trust until you were ready to claim it. The baby shower too? The baby shower too. How much did it cost? All of this? The renovation? The wedding? Today? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. I want to know what your love cost you in dollars and cents. I named a figure that made her gasp. The purchase price, the renovation, costs, the ongoing maintenance, the wedding expenses, today's celebration. Years of investment in a daughter who'd written me off. That's more than James and I make in 5 years combined. Money well spent. How can you say that? I gave you nothing in return, nothing but pain and rejection. You gave me hope. You gave me purpose. You gave me the chance to love you even when I couldn't hold you. That's worth any amount of money. Emily walked back to the bench, sat heavily. I don't know how to process this. Part of me is grateful beyond words. Part of me is horrified at my own blindness. Part of me is amazed by your incredible generosity. And part of me is angry that you never told me. Why angry? Because I spent months stressed about this venue. Worried about costs, about approval, about someone else booking my date. You watched me suffer through all that anxiety when you could have ended it with one sentence. Could I have? Really? If I'd told you I owned Rosewood, what would you have done? She considered it honestly. I would have accused you of trying to control me. I would have assumed you bought it to manipulate me. I would have looked for another venue just to prove my independence. Exactly. You weren't ready to receive the gift. So I gave it invisibly. Invisible love, she said softly. That's what this is, isn't it? All these years of invisible love. The most powerful kind. It works without recognition, without gratitude, without anything in return. But now it's not invisible anymore. Now I know. So what happens next? I hadn't thought that far ahead. For years, my love had been a secret gift, beautiful in its hiddenness. Now Emily knew everything. The dynamic would inevitably change. What do you want to happen next? I want to be worthy of it. This incredible love you've shown me. I want to earn it somehow. You already have. By coming home. By letting me walk you down the aisle. By carrying my grandchild. By sitting here now, talking to me instead of running away. I want to pay you back for the wedding, for everything. Absolutely not. Mom? Emily, listen to me. If you try to turn this into a debt, you'll ruin it. This wasn't a loan. It was a gift. Freely given, no strings attached. The only payment I want is your happiness. Then let me give you something else. Let me give you a key to the tower room. Let me officially make you welcome here, not as the secret owner, but as my mother. Let me throw you birthday parties here, and Mother's Day celebrations, and just random Tuesday dinners because I want to spend time with you in the place you made beautiful. The offer took my breath away. To be openly welcome at Rosewood, not as the hidden owner, but as Emily's beloved mother. To celebrate there without pretense or secrets. I'd like that very much. And when the baby comes, I want their first birthday party here. In the garden where their grandmother planted roses thinking of their mother. I want this baby to grow up knowing this place is home, as family, as love made visible. Yes, I whispered. Yes to all of it. Emily stood, walked to me, pulled me up from the bench. Thank you, she said simply, for buying me a castle, for loving me when I forgot how to love you back, for showing me what unconditional really means. We held each other in the garden of Rosewood Manor, mother and daughter, surrounded by the roses I'd planted, and the fountain I'd installed and all the visible proof of invisible love. The secret was out, but somehow it felt more beautiful in the light than it ever had in shadow. One more thing, Emily said, pulling back to look at me. I want to plan a party, a big one. I want to invite everyone who was at my wedding and tell them the truth. That my mother owns this place. That she's the mysterious benefactor who made our perfect day possible. That she loved me even when I couldn't see it. Emily, that's not necessary. It's not necessary. It's joyful. I want to celebrate you. I want everyone to know what an incredible mother I have. What an incredible woman you are. If that's what you want. It's what I want. But first, show me around. Really, show me. Not as a guest or a bride, but as your daughter. Show me your house. Show me the love you built into every room. So I did. I took Emily through Rosewood Manor as its owner for the first time, explaining choices I'd made with her in mind. The color palette that would photograph beautifully. The acoustics that would carry wedding music perfectly. The kitchen facilities that could handle any celebration. The guest rooms designed for out-of-town family. In the tower room, she sat at the vanity where she'd prepared for her wedding day. You chose this mirror knowing I'd sit here. I chose everything hoping you'd sit there someday. The view from this window? It's the same view I had from our car when I was little. I remembered which side you pressed your face against. The heating system, the lighting, even the outlets for hairstyling tools. You thought of everything. I thought of you. As the sun set over the gardens, we made our way back downstairs. Emily moved slowly, one hand supporting her growing belly, the other trailing along banisters I'd chosen, door frames I'd restored, walls I'd painted with her dreams in mind. James is going to be amazed when I tell him, she said as we reached the main entrance. He always said this place felt like love. Now he'll know why. Will you tell him everything? About the years before your wedding? About why I bought it? If that's okay with you, no more secrets between any of us. No more secrets, I agreed. Margaret was waiting in my driveway when I arrived home, sitting on the front steps like a teenager. Well, she demanded, how did it go? She knows. Everything. And it's better than I ever imagined. We're going to be okay, Maggie. More than okay. Margaret hugged me hard. I'm proud of you, for loving her so completely, for waiting so patiently, for showing her what real love looks like. She's going to tell everyone about Rosewood, about everything I did. Good. It's time the world knew what I've always known, that my sister is extraordinary. That night, I called Richard's grave. Not literally, I'm not that kind of widow. But I sat in his study, looking at his photo, and told him everything. She knows, my love, about Rosewood, about the wedding, about all of it. She's not angry. She's grateful. She wants to celebrate there with our grandchild, wants to make it truly part of our family story. I touched his picture, tracing the face I'd loved for 23 years. I think we did okay, Richard. Our stubborn, beautiful daughter found her way home. And now there's going to be a baby. A baby who'll grow up knowing they're loved beyond measure, even when they can't see it. The next morning, Emily called before I'd finished my coffee. Mom, I've been thinking all night about Rosewood, about everything, and I want you to know, I understand now why you kept it secret. It wasn't deception. It was protection. You were protecting my pride, my independence, my right to receive your gift in my own time. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I need you to know that I see the wisdom in what you did. If you'd told me from the beginning, I would have ruined it, somehow. But this way, I got to experience real magic. I got to believe in fairy tales. I got to have the perfect wedding without knowing it was perfect because my mother loved me. I'm glad you see it that way. I see everything differently now. Not just Rosewood, but all of it. The years of silence, your patience with my anger, the way you never stopped hoping we'd reconcile. You loved me at my worst and waited for my best. That's what mothers do. No, Mom. That's what extraordinary mothers do. And I'm going to make sure our baby knows they have one of those. 6 months later, Emily gave birth to a daughter, Sarah Rose Blake, named for me and for the roses that bloomed in the garden where her parents fell in love all over again. Emily called me from the hospital at dawn, tears in her voice. She's perfect, Mom. Absolutely perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and Dad's stubborn chin. How are you feeling? Like I understand you now. How fierce this love is. How you do anything, sacrifice anything, wait any amount of time for your child's happiness. Welcome to motherhood, sweetheart. I want to bring her to Rosewood when she's old enough. I want her first photos taken in the garden. I want her to know that's where her family learned how to love each other again. And she did. 6 weeks later, we had a professional photographer capture 4 generations of women in the Rosewood Gardens. Me, Emily, baby Sarah, and Margaret as honorary grandmother. We sat under the rose arbor I'd planted with Emily's dreams in mind, holding the newest member of our family. The photographer caught the perfect shot. Emily looking down, at Sarah with wonder, me looking at Emily with pride, Margaret looking at all of us with joy. In the background, barely visible but unmistakably there, was Rosewood Manor. The castle built from invisible love, now shining in full sunlight. That photo sits on my mantle now, next to the one of Richard and the one of Emily's wedding day. 3 generations of love, captured in a single frame. The past, present, and future of our family, all of us finally visible to each other. Emily was right about one thing. Some stories do need telling. This one, the story of how a mother's invisible love built a castle for her daughter's dreams, deserves to be remembered, not because it's extraordinary, but because it's true. Love endures. Love waits. Love works its magic whether we can see it or not. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, love gets to step out of the shadows and be celebrated in the full light of day in the garden where it planted roses and waited for them to bloom. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.